Hello everybody, this is Fester Whips and we're going to make a whip in my workshop today. Let's get to it. First thing we're going to need is some spring steel rod. I think it's 3/16. Just want to rough it up. Alright, to make this whip, one of the ways that I've started making whips now, I have watched many tutorials over and over. This is just the way I do my whips. There's a bunch of different ways to do it, and this is how I make mine. I got a 3/16 inch spring steel rod, and I scrubbed it up real good on the belt sander, so it'll have these little light pits in it to where it'll grip. And I've got this right here. I think this right here is like a 2-foot piece. I'm not going to use all of it, but I'm going to braid up until I have enough where I'm going to cut the handle off where I want it. Then I have about a 4-foot piece of sinker cord. And then I have about a 6-foot piece of black paracord with the guts still in it. This will be the only 550 paracord that I will have in this whip. And this right here is just making the minimum core. Now we're going to start off by sliding the sinker cord over the rod. Just like this. There's a little bit like the rod, I use it to stir up the wax, but that don't really matter. It'll stick a little bit better. It'll grip. So I keep working on. This right here is going to take a little bit forever. Okay, let's try new tactics. Let me try to melt some of this right here off of the rod. Oh, look at that. Take a scrap piece and there we go. All right. We shall try it again. I will get there eventually. This right here seems to be a little bit faster now. Alright. I've got about 13 inches from the end of right here. Now I'm going to take a little bit of this athletic tape, not hockey tape, athletic tape, because it's stretchy a little bit, and all I'm wanting to do is hold the end of it on my rod, just like this. So this right here is going to wind up getting cut off, and then I'm going to be braiding down this right here. But before we do that, we're going to fill the core with BBs. Alright, so basically what we got here is 13 inches of 13/16 stings. Mother. Alright everybody, so we have 13 inches of steel spring. Alright, so now we have the core made. We have 3/16 spring steel rod, 13 inches of the rod under the sinker cord. We have another 12 inches of BBs, and then I start my paracord under my sinker cord. And the sinker cord, and from the sinker cord we have another 36 inches of cord. Actually, it's another 42 inches of cord, but I'm going to take the end of it, pull back about 6 inches or so of the guts, and I'm just going to clip them off. I'm going to let that fold back into the thing. That way, there's a small little gradual step right there. We're going to be using whip maker's cord for this particular project, so you'll see why I do some of the things I do in 1 minute. Now, whenever you bind this, you want to make sure that you bind the piece of paracord that still have the guts in it really, really tight beside the BBs. You want to go down, up, back down, and then all the way up, and make sure that you wrap your artificial sinew extremely tight around your handle. That way there's no slippage and everything will stay where it should. So this right here is going to be the start to the center of the core. Now we're going to braid down the handle and just past the BBs for the first layer, and that's going to be an 8 plat. Now, it's not mandatory, but it definitely certainly helps if you go to Harbor Freight and get yourself a little vise like this right here. That I use mine that suctions down the top of my desk. Excuse me. But you also have the kind that clip onto the desk. Whatever you like. This right here, I like it because I can move it all around in front of me, and I can adjust the neck of it and everything else. So this right here is what I'm going to use. And now let's measure out the cords I'm going to use for my 8 plat first part of the belly overlay. Now I'm going to be using 2 7-foot strands and 2 9-foot strands to braid down the handle. Let's do it. Which it probably really won't matter as long as they're around 7 foot. Except for my book of knowledge. But that is for maybe my grandkids one day. A little book with different history events I've lived through. Now, this right here is the start of the 8 plat. There's a little bit of gaps right now, but I'm going to roll that out in a little bit. It's going to even everything out. And I'm braiding really, really tightly on the handle. In fact, it's probably going to be tight everywhere that I braid. And we are back. And it is, well, not back. Anyway, here we got the handle braided down 13 inches. We got it wrapped 1 inch on the handle part to 1 inch on the where it transitions over to the core where the BBs are. And then we dropped 2 strands where the BBs ended. Okay. And then where the 1 inch before the sinker cord ended, I ended one here and I put the other one in the core and braid it down. And then I cut everything off the length to where we got a 2 inch, a 4 inch, an 8 inch, and a 10 inch piece. And that continues on with the rest of it. That's just the center of the core. Now I'm going to braid over it again, and I'm going to do it with the 12 plat. Action. Fuck. I've cut my strands for the whip. That's going to be 7 foot long, roughly. And I've cut them at 16 foot, 14 foot, and 12 foot. And there's 2 of each. 2 14 foot, 2 16 foot, 2 12 foots. Fuck, I hope I'm good at editing. I'm going to cut the camera back on whenever I get on, braid it on down with this layer of my 12 plat. Alright, so this is it after the second layer has been braided down. There's a 12 plat. I drop my, now measuring from the end of the thong where the end of the metal rod meets the beginning of the thong, that's where I'm measuring these measurements from. The first one I cut back was after 14 inches. I dropped the strand. At 16 inches, I dropped the strand. And then I dropped 2 at 27 inches. And then I braided all the way down to 41 inches. So, and then each little cord that was left after that, I cut it down an inch down each time. So, now we're ready for the third layer. Not the final layer, but the third layer. And it's going to be a little bit time consuming. Let's do it. Something else too, whenever I bound it right here from where the end of the handle meets the thong, I marked it as I braided over where the artificial sinew is. And this time I added an inch on each side, and I'm going to start right up here with the artificial sinew, and I'm going to come all the way down to where it's 2 inches from the center, and I'm going to bind that as tight as I can. And while I do that, I'm going to bind up the handle. Let's get it. Okay, so now we have the second layer ready for the third. I have bound right here really tight, back 2 inches and forward 2 inches from where the thong meets the handle. And I braided and I wrapped this really, really tight with artificial sinew all the way down so to catch that middle that we ground off in the beginning. And then from here, I just lightly wrapped it, not putting much tension on it, all the way down to about 8 inches from the bottom. Now, whenever I braid down to the bottom, I'm going to pull this a little bit off so there ain't going to be no little knot there. And then I'll just braid that on in. Now, for the third layer, it's going to be a 16 plat. That's not going to be our final layer, but that's going to be our next layer. And I have cut two 24-foot strands, two 20-inch strands, two 14-foot strands. I say that backwards. We have 24-foot strands, two of those. We have two 20-foot strands. We have two 14-foot strands, and we have two 18-foot strands. And that is what we're going to braid down over our second layer here. And that is going to bring it on down to our piece of paracord. Let's get started. All right. So now that we have our 16 plat overlay all the way down, this right here is our third part of our belly. And from the thong, where the thong starts, you can see that I created a little over under extra there so I could see where the end of my rod is on the inside and know that it ends right there. So I start measuring from here with my measurements for my thong. Okay? So the first strand I dropped was at 11 inches. The second one was at 13 inches. The next one I dropped was at 18 inches. The next one I dropped was at 21 inches. The next one I dropped was at 31 inches, and the next one I dropped was at 35 inches. And from the start of the thong to the end of it, we have braided down 57 inches. And that's to here. Now, to the end of the core, that's 6 foot. And then one of the ones I ended with has come down about 8 inches down from the end of this right here. That way, whenever I start my English eye, I can start it with this right here at the very tip of it and work my way back down. And again, I'm going to take this right here off whenever I get to that point Each time I get to that point, I just slide it down, and then I keep on braiding. And of course, this right here is going to get hacked off right about there. So now it's extremely important that you roll the whip at this point. At this point right here, you want to get like a really flat, heavy surface like concrete, clean concrete, or hardwood floor, something really flat and smooth. And you want to get a board and you want to roll it. And it's probably one of the more important rolls in this whip because it just aligns everything that's been rolled under it and this right here layer to it. And because whenever you bind this whip, you want everything to be already straightened out and lined up. So the best way to do that is to roll it really, really well before you bind it. Then after you bind the whip, you're going to want to roll the heck out of it again. And I will get back whenever I start rolling it, and then I'll start binding it. So keep in mind, whenever I built or was building this layer, I kicked one out, but I left one in and I braided over it. So for every one I kicked out, I also braided the other one in whenever I was dropping strands all the way down. And keep that in mind. Now whenever I cut it, my strands, I cut them really close, but not so close they'll slip back. So I wait till probably whenever I start to get right here to braid, and I'll trim this little piece right here off as I braid down. So I got it rolled, and now I'm fixing to bind it, but this isn't hockey tape. This is athletic tape. It is stretchy, wax can go through it, and it holds. And whenever you bind over it with the artificial sinew, you can't even tell there's much of a layer there, and that'll help build the next layer for the layer that's going over this right here, which is whenever you're doing stuff like this right here, it's always good to have your safety equipment because of sparks and stuff. Where's my grinder? Oh. Round one. Let's go to round mother go to two. Got to let the handle cut down to 11 inches. and 6 and almost 7 feet of thong, but it'll be whenever I come back and start back braiding. Now, probably weren't smart me trying to put the last more cord. Talking to myself. Whenever you're doing this, you want to make sure that the spark kicks you in the fucking face. Nope. And we're back. So we cut the handle off of the end 11 inches. And then I took a 50 cal cartridge, cut it in half, just so it would just barely fit snug on the end of it. So now from here, 11 inches forward is the handle, and then the rest of it is the thong. I have double binded this after laying down the sports tape, and I want to make sure that everything stuck really, really good. You want to make sure you roll this constantly in between binding and everything else. You can't over roll it. So I started out with 3 pieces that were 24 foot of 3/16 whipmaker's cord, and I started an English eye. I ran 2 cords through the center of this red one and braided over the white ones, and then started incorporating the white ones whenever I reached the tip of my whip is right here. So I started braiding down, and right now I'm about 1.5 feet in, and I am at a 8 plat. And let's braid it down and see what we can do. This right here is going to be covered up. I'm going to epoxy this on, and I'm going to put a knot over that whole thing. But this right here is going to be a little bit different than what I normally make with my bullwhip. So let's hope I don't mess it up.